on filmsgonewild.com. My name is John Wildman, and we are going to talk about the film The Last Horns of Africa. We have Garth de Bruno Austin, director of the film, Morgan Pelt, producer of the film. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's good to talk about the film a little bit.
Exactly. And this film is screening at the EARTHxFILM film festival, which is an environmental film festival. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure this film has played other not strictly environmental film festivals, but of course, it makes a whole lot of sense that it would be playing this particular festival. And we always start the show by having our filmmakers introduce our audience to the film. Usually, that's our director. So. Tell us about Last Horns of Africa.
Yeah, so this is a documentary that's taken quite a while to make, about 4 years in the making, and it follows the rhino-poaching crisis in South Africa and the people on the front lines of this crisis and what they go through on a day-to-day basis. And we sort of pull the curtain back to show this world to the audience and give them just a bit of an insight into what's actually happening. Okay,
it's funny because the two of you are of our day's schedule of film festival interviews. You're our first one, and you're the only one to have made me cry. So thank you for that.
There we go.
Yes, I know exactly which part of the film that you are speaking of, and every single time we get to that part, we also shed a tear.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And and aside from teasing the two of you about that, I bring it up because I think it's one of the things that I really appreciated about the film was this. You're operating on a couple different levels. You're operating both with the kind of the macro view of this issue and this topic. Which is, we're trying to save a species here, and we're trying to do what we can systemically to stop, the killing of these rhinos and to make sure that they can flourish, and and on a couple different levels. But we also go into the personal level of it. We go into the the thing that touches the animal lover in all of us. And I think the fact that you do that so well, that because quite honestly, we've seen documentaries in the past that have done either side of the issue. But the fact that the two of you are able to kind of deftly combine them is wonderful. But that's a challenge as a filmmaker. And I would love for you to start by talking about how you achieve that balance, and either both in the filming of collecting the interviews and following people along, and but also in the editing, because you could have had a 4 or 5 hour movie, right?
Yeah, so, definitely.
So
content.
So talk about that. Talk about how the decisions you were making on both fronts, filming and editing, to get to that balance, and what struggle that might have been.
Yeah, because I'll start off by saying that this is a very collaborative project, in terms of myself and Morgan and Sean, our partner, who came along and helped us shoot this, and our two editors that Danielle Nell started the project and Jonathan Rowland finished it. It was very much a collaborative piece, trying to get the story to actually come together, because that's what we found the most difficult, was trying to balance. There's 4 pretty distinct storylines in the film, and it was so difficult just to try and figure out how to get them all to land and to get the audience to even remotely connect with any one of them, because they all, yes, they're in the rhino world, but Don and Petronelle, they are on opposite ends of this fight. Don's on the very front lines of trying to protect these rhinos. He's in Kruger Park. He's dealing with the poachers. Petronelle's dealing with the fallout of it. But she's got her own mission going on, and she's trying to figure out how to save orphan rhinos. There's the criminal aspect, and then on the side of that, there's this debate that sits in the middle, and we just, trying to let people know that this is going on. But It was a very long process. That was the longest process out of all of this, was trying to figure out how to actually put it together. And that's where, we had a version of the film, and we just sat with it and went, you know what, we've come to the end of what we can do creatively. We need to sort of get someone on board who can help us. And that was Jonathan Rowland, our final editor there. He's really, really amazing. I believe he cut one of the original House of Cards series in England, so that, his background is 40 years of experience. Yeah.
But from the beginning, we had decided that we really wanted a human story.
Yeah.
And not cloud that with too many facts and statistics. And we really wanted the audience to connect on, that human level to people. Because we can all see part of ourselves in Petronelle or Don.
But it was a big struggle trying to put it all together. Just at one point, it was, we started off with the debate section of the film that was 50 minutes long. And we just sat there going, well, that doesn't work. That's not our film. It's not about debate. And trying to also balance the scenes near the end. I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler-free interview, but there's, as the section near the end, the balance between the emotion and the guys trying to catch the criminals. That was such a difficult thing to try and figure out. And even once the film was done, because you're so close to the film, you're not sure if it's actually worked properly until you get it into the hands of audience members to actually have a watch of this thing and see if it actually, if we pulled it off.
We're so thankful to EARTHx because we're able to bring it to a large audience around the world.
It was our first festival as well.
Yeah, so wow. Premiere, it really was. And we've been inundated with messages and responses from around the world, with people loving the documentary and really feeling passionate. They want to take charge, and what can they do to help the rhino?
Hopefully that's just the start of it as well.
Yeah. Well, listen, and in fact, I'm going to stop because I think I've done you a disservice in how I led into that for someone who's seen this, who has not seen the movie, because frankly, you're operating on three fronts. And now that we're talking about it, and now that I'm waking up with you, through this process, because the pursuit of the poachers and the undercover aspect of that, which is very similar to Louis Soyas's The Cove, frankly, to your very good credit, because that's
thank you.
For the comparison.
Thank you very
much.
It's
an
amazing film, yeah.
But it has that thrill to it, right? Because you've got interviewers with the clouded voices, in secrecy, so we don't know identities and what have you, and you literally have cameras that are in situations where literally people could get shot, and you have all that. You have that palpable excitement of what exactly is going to happen here, and then you have you have this debate on this policy, world government debate of what do we do about this rhino horn demand. And and frankly, I was actually, and again to your great credit, I'm right there with the debate, like going, well, this of course makes total sense. You take away the demand and you do this, and then someone says, well, but this hasn't worked. And but that hasn't worked either. And and so I'm arguing with them as each person is making the point. But yeah, a movie full of that, and people are going to tune out pretty damn quickly.
Exactly.
And and then of course, then we have the story of Thor and the fate of this this baby rhino, and and the attempt to rehabilitate him and give him a life. I also want to talk to you about this and have you talk about the approach to filmmaking with this particular documentary, with this, because there are two basic approaches, right? Where one, you map out your story and then you find interviews and footage to plug in to give evidence to each step of your story. And then there is the thing of, well, there's this thing I'm going to explore and I have no idea where the hell it's going to take me. And, and at the end, we'll figure out what my ending is. And I was thinking about that as I was watching the film, because of all three of these fronts. And, there's one where you have a a procedural, a police, a kind of thing where you're going, well, they have a project and it's going to come to a finite end. Are we going to capture these guys or not? Then you have a debate, which is going to come up to a vote, and that vote is going to say yes or no. And then we have the life of this animal, and we're going to see, how he's going to grow up, how he's going to, what's going to happen. So you got all three of these fronts, and I'm curious to hear both of you talk about, as you were filming, what was in your heads, like you're going, what, are we going to get a vote today, or are we going to storm the castle today, or what's going to happen? Talk about that. Take us into, both of you, the mindset as the filming was going along of what is our film today versus what was our film 3 days ago versus last week.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll start with that first part of it, which is the process itself of finding the story. And as you said, there's a couple of ways you can approach a documentary. You can map it out, and that's not what we did to begin with. We sort of have this hybrid of that process, which is we knew we wanted to make a rhino film. We knew we wanted to base it around Care for Wild, because that's our family connection. We've got family there, and it's a very close personal place to us, so we knew that's part of the story we wanted to tell. But we didn't know what the story would be at Care for Wild. We didn't know if it would be Thor or because obviously
we only knew two things at that point, and that was it'd be a feature documentary and there's no presenter, and then no narration. And
it was inspired by films like Virunga and the Curve and films where you're following your protagonists and you're following your characters as opposed to having a voiceover. And those films really did inspire us. And Cartel Land, another one where we just went, wow, this is so visceral. It feels like you're there with them. And that's where we went into this, sort of looking for a story. And we just happened upon the Thor story. And then we realized, okay, we need to flip the coin and get to Kruger Park, try and tell that story. And the criminal side of everything happened upon us. That was just luck, pure luck, that particular story unfolded in front of us, and we were within proximity and had the connections to actually tell that story.
And lucky they trusted us to come along and
a lot of trust.
And can't say too much, so I don't want to give it away.
But that process changed once we had a good amount of footage in the can. We decided, okay, we need to step back for a minute and look at what we've got, and before we just carry on filming endlessly, we need to figure out what the story is. We had captured Thor's story, and we had partially captured part of Kruger Park, and the debate was something we knew we wanted to try and dive into, and we started putting it onto paper, trying to figure out.
We had a roadmap.
Yeah.
But with rhino conservation and a rhino documentary in particular, there's so many rabbit warrens you can go down in terms of story. So we didn't go to Asia in the film. We didn't really touch on too much of the demand.
We didn't go into hunting at all. That's a whole different pipe that you can dive down and have an endless debate about. We sort of stuck with the story that unfolded in front of us as naturally as we could, as it was presented to us, and we sort of picked that style of filmmaking. Just let the story happen upon us, and then try and figure out what it is we're trying to tell on paper. Look at the footage, look at the interviews, try and, before we head to the edit, try and figure out what it is we've got, what we're missing. And then the whole criminal aspect was just a waiting game once we were in it.
That was tough because you're told it's going to happen next week or next month, and then it doesn't happen. And you don't know why it hasn't happened. They don't need to tell you.
8 months later, it still hasn't happened.
8 months later, a year later.
Do we scrap it from the film? Is it going to happen? We've got no idea. We've shot all this footage, some of these, secretive interviews and bits and pieces. So we don't know if it's going to go ahead. It's just, it was what it was going to be. There was nothing we could do about it. And same for most of this film. Everything that sort of happened, there was very little that we actually had a lot of control over. Besides the interviews, we could go and talk to people all we wanted, but the meat of the story, we had to just wait.
Unfolding, we had absolutely no control over.
Right.
We just had to follow the doco story and just figure out.
In that sense. Yeah.
The last question I want to ask is, and I am, I'm a huge animal person. My wife and I, we rescue dogs. And we kind of have a name for ourselves as as the people in our neighborhood that, people literally bring animals to us, and we find homes for them and rehab them and everything. So of course Thor's story, like I said, from the beginning of this interview, nailed me to the freaking wall. Talk about that from the filmmaker's perspective, because you're following along this story, and as people are going through high emotional moments, of course it makes for great cinema, but you're people too, and so talk about how you navigate that, that humanity with doing the job, how you strike that balance in the moment, so you're respectful and you're caring, and yet you're also getting the footage you need.
With Care for Wild, it is a peculiar case because it is family. Garth's father and is with Petronelle, and so it is something that we are very protective over. We're very protective over Petronelle and Thor,
and the Care for Wild story.
And Care for Wild. For me, before I became a filmmaker, I was an environmental scientist. I was working as the volunteer coordinator at Care for Wild, so I helped raise Thor as well.
And that's where we met.
And that is where
before we started the film, we met and fell in love there, and moved to Australia together and went back to do the documentary. And I think that played a big role in us navigating the respect for Care for Wild that we hopefully portrayed in the film, and that sort of care that we took with that particular story is because of that emotional connection we have with Petronelle, as well as with the Care for Wild itself.
And likewise, it also, that connection and that trust enabled her to open up while we were filming. As Petronelle would never do that with anyone else. Yeah,
and we respectfully waited for when Petronelle was ready for that interview. We whenever she was ready, we were going to be ready. Yeah. And however long it was going to take, that was the time it was going to take. And we patiently waited, and eventually we did get that interview and that part of the story. And, we were just there, just with Thor, we were there while it happened, while it unfolded. Again, just maybe it's the universe that helped us out there and gave us a nudge in that direction. But yeah, when it started to unfold, we took as much care as we could in trying to capture it, not knowing what the outcome was going to be as well. So we went with our gut and followed it, and then took a lot of patience and a lot of care in getting Petronelle to try and open up to about what happened.
Well,
and what she went through.
Yeah, it is remarkable, and and frankly, that portion of the film, like I said, in the other, just with the other two pillars of the film, could have been one in of itself. Again, the film is The Last Horns of Africa. We've been talking to Garth de Bruno Austin. He's the director of the film. Morgan Pelt, who's the producer of the film, which is screening at EARTHx. Again, I loved it to death. I'm hoping that this helps kick the two of you off with this film on a long film festival tour. One, so you can get those audiences that can appreciate the work you've done, but also for the call to action element of it, and people can join in the fight. Again, congratulations on the film, and thank you for talking about it.
Thank you so very much. This was also our very first press interview ever, so thank you. This is great.
All right.
It's all very new to us, this whole process. Festivals, feature films, press interviews. It's great. It's a lot of firsts for us.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.